I'm going to go ahead and place our front wheel hub, located right in front behind your wheel, behind our brake rotor. Using our 19mm socket, I'm going to go ahead and remove our lug nuts. With the lug nuts removed, go ahead and remove your wheel, set it aside. Using an 18mm socket, we'll go ahead and remove the nut securing our sway bar end link to the strut. So the threaded shaft here is spinning with the nut, so we're going to put a pair of pliers on the back side, hold that, and then we'll remove that nut. Using a 10mm socket, remove the bolt here holding our brake flex hose to the strut. It is a nut and bolt application, so we're just going to set that aside and pull this bracket out. We're going to use our pick, go into this little bracket right here. I'm going to open this up so we can go ahead and get our ABS wire free. Once you open that up, go ahead and work that wire out. Set that as separated like so. We want to go ahead and we want to remove the nuts on the two bolts, upper and lower bolts, that are securing our strut to the knuckle. We use our 22mm socket. Let's go ahead and loosen these nuts. And our bolt is spinning here, so let's go ahead and put a wrench on the other side. Let's go ahead and loosen our lower. We're going to go ahead and remove our brake caliper. We're going to go ahead and loosen our two 14mm bolts securing the caliper to the bracket. There's one up top here, one on the bottom. Go ahead and remove the bolt, set those aside. We're going to grab our hanging tool here. Go ahead and slide the caliper off here. Let's go ahead and hang the caliper up and out of the way. Now we have our pad springs here. Pop these out. Go ahead and grab our brake pads and remove these, set those aside. On the back side of our brake caliper bracket, we're going to have two 17mm bolts. Let's go ahead and loosen and remove those. Now when removing the last bolt here, you want to be careful. The caliper bracket will be loose as well as the front brake rotor. So you want to be careful supporting both of these here. You don't want either one of these components to fall on your foot. Remove the bolt, caliper bracket, and you can grab that rotor as well and slide that off. I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect our outer tie rotor in here. There's a cotter pin locking the nut in place. So we're gonna use a pair of our pliers here, or cutters. Basically want to get both sides of the cotter pin tabs down. With both of those tabs bent down, you can grab your cutters and basically pinch and pull, working the cotter pin out. Using our 17mm socket, let's go ahead and loosen and remove this nut. Then we're going to use a pry bar. We're going to put it between our sway bar and our tie rod end. What we want to do is apply some upward pressure on the tie rod itself out of the knuckle here. Now we don't want to put a lot of pressure, just enough upward pressure here, and we're going to hit the knuckle here to release that ball joint. That'll pop out like so. Go ahead and set that aside. Using our 10mm socket, we want to go ahead and remove the bolt here holding our ABS sensor into our knuckle. Go ahead and remove that bolt and pull your sensor out. I'm going to go ahead and put that bolt right back in that hole. And go ahead and just bring our sensor on the other side and let that hang. Using an 18mm socket, we're going to go ahead and remove these two nuts here and this bolt. This is going to release our ball joint from our lower control arm. Next, we want to go ahead and remove our spindle nut or axle nut here. Now, it has been dimpled to prevent it from unspinning, so we're going to use a punch. Pretty much open that up. Use our 33mm socket. Good, remove that nut. With the spindle nut removed, let's go ahead and make sure that that axle moves freely inside of our hub, and it does. Let's come up top here, and you want to support this because we're going to remove the knuckle. Our lower ball joint is disconnected from the lower control arm. Everything else has been separated. Only thing holding this in place is our two strut bolts here. So hold this in place. Work those bolts out. Go ahead and grab that. Separate it from the strut. And we're going to push our CV axle through. There you have it. I'm going to go ahead and try and remove our brake backing plate here. There's going to be 4 10mm bolts here, and 2 on the other side. I'm going to go ahead and spray these down here with a little bit of rust penetrant. Let this soak in a little bit. I'm going to use our box 10mm wrench. I'm going to try and loosen this here. If it doesn't want to move, I'm just going to use my hammer and just tap our wrench. All right, that is coming free. Let's go ahead and repeat for the other 3. So I switched over to a gear wrench once we had those loose. Go ahead and spin those right out. I'm going to go ahead and use a flathead screwdriver and gently work my way around this back cup insert. A little bit of finesse working this around. Now this is going to be something that we want to reuse, so you don't want to damage this. Slowly coming up. And when this pops up, you want to pay attention to where the hole is here for your ABS sensor. It's going to have to go back in that same position. So we're going to go ahead and set this aside. Now this is a point we can go ahead and remove the backing plate. We're just going to give that a little flex. We'll go ahead and put that on our bench. And what we're going to do is go ahead and press our hub into our bearing and into our knuckle. We did go ahead and throw our backing plate on. Didn't have to, but it does make it a little bit easier so we don't have to deal with that afterwards. Seems bottomed out there. I'm going to go ahead and remove the knuckle and the wheel hub from the press. Now let's go ahead and install our screws or our bolts here holding our backing plate on. And let's go ahead and snug those down. On the back side of our knuckle, we're going to go ahead and install this trim ring here, and it has a notch for your ABS speed sensor. So we're going to pay attention to where it goes into on the knuckle right here. There's that hole right here for your ABS to come through. So we're going to line this up on there. Once that's lined up, we're just gently going to tap this in and around. And make sure that that is lined up properly on there. Now I switched over to a punch here to go ahead and work around the perimeter here, make it a little bit easier to get this in. We're all set for installation. Go ahead and line up your knuckle here. I'm going to lift up our axle, slide the axle through our hub here, and at the same time we're going to get our lower ball joint installed below. Just kind of wobble that axle around a little bit, it'll pop right in. Line up that knuckle with that strut. We're just going to get those bolts popped on in that, like so. Good to install the nuts here. And just get those started a few threads. Go ahead and install the axle nut. Now go ahead and just work that knuckle. Get that ball joint to pop on through like so. I'm going to go ahead and get our two nuts installed. No, I did spray a little bit of rust penetrant on those threads there just to try and clean those up a little bit and get those to spin on nice. And here we go. Once we get those started, let's go ahead and get the bolt started here. I like to thread these in as far as I can by hand. Now let's go ahead and snug those down. I'm going to go ahead and torque these down to 68 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and snug down our axle nut. Install your outer tie rod. Get the nut installed. I'm going to go ahead and snug that down. I want to grab your ABS sensor. I'm going to bring that around, put it into our knuckle. Install our little bolt here. Get it started a few threads, and then we're going to go ahead and snug that down. And once that bottoms out just a little bit more. Now that we have our sensor installed in the knuckle, you want to go ahead and install the harness into this retainer clip here. So just work that wire up into that. And go ahead and lock that down. Now that we have our ABS wire in the clip, I'm going to use a small pick just to get underneath. I'm going to open that up and press that little lock tab on. So you'll line up our sway bar end link. Get our nut installed. Go ahead and set your brake rotor on. Now, if your particular vehicle has the set screws here for the front, you want to go ahead and make sure that it lines up with the holes in your hub. Our particular vehicle doesn't have it. Once you have your rotor on, let's go ahead and line up your brake caliper bracket. I'm going to slide this around and then put our bolts into the back side. What we want to do is just get our bolts started here. And let's go ahead and get those snug down. Now I'm going to torque this down to 36 foot-pounds. Making sure that the cotter pin hole lines up with the notch in the castle nut. If it has overlapped it, you want to go ahead and tighten down this nut to the next open notch in your castle nut, and then install your cotter pin. Go ahead and install your cotter pin. Use your pliers, bend this over, cut off excess. Go ahead and install our brake pads. Install our ABS wire bracket and then our brake line. I'm going to put our bolt through and put a nut on the other side, and we'll go ahead and snug that down. So what we're going to do is remove our hanger from our brake caliper here. We're going to set this up top like so. I'm going to install our little spring clips here. And these go into the little holes in the back of your pads. Go ahead and bring your caliper down and on. At this point here, once that caliper is on, you can go ahead and get the bolts started on the back side. Get them started a few threads. Do the same for the bottom. Now, as I'm trying to tighten up this bolt here into our caliper bracket, the whole slide pin is moving. So I'm just going to go ahead and use my 17mm wrench and then put my socket on the other side. And go ahead and tighten that down. Go ahead and do the same for the bottom. Let's go ahead and torque down our caliper bracket to knuckle bolts to 79 foot-pounds. Let's go ahead and torque down our bolts here, holding our caliper to the caliper bracket. This is going to be to 25 foot-pounds. Use an extension on the top here for a little better clearance. Let's go ahead and tighten down these nuts here. We're going to go ahead and torque down our strut to knuckle nuts here to 214 foot-pounds. Do the same for the bottom. I'll go ahead and install a couple lug nuts here. I'm going to use a pry bar. I'm going to go ahead and rotate our wheel around like so. Now we're going to go ahead and torque down our axle nut to 217 foot-pounds. Once you have that torqued, you can go ahead, remove your socket here, remove our lug nuts. Now that we have our axle nut torqued, you want to go ahead and we're going to dimple the nut here right in this notch. We're going to use our punch. Go ahead and install your wheel. Let's get our lug nuts all started here. Once we get all of our lug nuts started, we're going to go ahead and snug them down. Let's go ahead and torque down our wheels to 76 foot-pounds.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.